right, so today is Tuesday, February 16. I do hope I did get the date correctly because in this time of the pandemic, I actually have to have a calendar crossing of X's to keep track of the days. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, and good night to everyone. Thank you for joining us for another webinar hosted by Get Safe Online. Now, if you visit their website, it will tell you that they are the leading source of unbiased, factual, and easy to understand information on online safety. Now, my name is Andrea Chisholm, and I'll be your moderator for the next hour. But before we get started, we want to have an idea where our participants are joining us from. So I see that we have 44, 45, and the numbers are going up so far. So based on where you're joining from, I don't know if we can see all the faces just yet, but if you're joining from Grenada, you can just type in the chat that, yes, I'm from Grenada. If you're from Trinidad and Tobago, you can say so as well. Whether you are from, and I see one of our panelists giving a thumbs up. So whichever part of the world you're from, you can say that. Are you from Jamaica? I see that Barbados is in the house, St. Lucia is here, Trinidad is here, Belize, beautiful countries here, Dominica, Guyana, Antigua, so they're from all over the place. I can't list out everything. So you are from all over, and we just want to say welcome and thank you so much for joining us today for the webinar. Now, let me tell you something. You've started off very well in the chat by typing the countries where you're joining us from. And I want us to keep that level of interaction up throughout the rest of the webinar. So we'll be having a question and answer session. So if you have questions, you can also type them in the chat and we'll pose them to our expert set of panelists. Now, today we're going to be talking about phishing. Specifically, our topic is fishing in the Caribbean. And since COVID, all of us have been spending more time online. We've been having meetings online, webinars online. We're also having dates and family dinners online. Everything is online. And because of that, scammers have found creative ways to get into our personal data and to attack us. And we'll be dissecting some of that this evening, morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. Now, our panelists, I'm just going to ask them to just smile and wave as I introduce them. We'll begin with John Ehring. And John is from a company that we're all familiar with, that's Microsoft. He is a senior government affairs manager of digital diplomacy at Microsoft. He analyzes the global cybersecurity landscape, drives engagement with regional government teams, and contributes to Microsoft's efforts to promote peace and security in cyberspace through various multi-stakeholder initiatives. Now, before John joined Microsoft, he served as political appointee during the Obama administration at the Department of Defense. Thank you, John. And our next panelist will be Jervis Dabi. And Jervis is an ICT officer at the Ministry of Education in Grenada. Jervis, you're not smiling and waving yet. Yes, and he has been hosting a weekly Zoom show on cybersecurity and has made significant steps in getting Grenadians cyber ready, which earned him the title of Get Safe Online Cyber Hero. Let me get his title correctly. He's the Get Safe Online Cyber Hero 2020. That sounds very fancy. And he focuses on phishing and online privacy. And Jervis is a teacher by profession. And our next panelist is Darren De Ray, and he's a digital anthropologist. Thank you, Darren, for smiling, and who has been studying, researching, and presenting on topics related to cybersecurity, internet addiction, cyberbullying, and social media etiquette, something that we all need. Darren also wears the hat of webmaster at the University of the West Indies St. Augustine campus and has presented voluntarily to over 16,000 students, parents, and teachers in a number of countries. Thank you very much, Darren, and the rest of our panelists. Now we're going to kick things off, ladies and gentlemen, with remarks from the resident British Commissioner in Grenada, Wendy Freeman. and she is connecting her audio and will start speaking now. Yes. Over to you, High Commissioner. Hi.
Hello. So I had a few technical issues getting with my video. So thank you very much and good evening, everybody. My name is Wendy Freeman and I'm the resident British Commissioner in St George's in the lovely Spice Island of Grenada. Delighted to be joining you this evening. Now, you may be wondering why I'm here. Well, as you may know, Get Safe Online is a UK-based organisation that works to provide high-quality public education and awareness services about online risks. The UK government's Commonwealth Cyber Security Programme has funded Get Safe Online to provide these services in the Commonwealth Caribbean, including in Grenada, for about 2 years now. This work includes the development of a fully comprehensive online safety information website, which is www.getsafeonline.gd, to be a central point of reference for citizens in Grenada and across the Caribbean. A capacity building training scheme for persons so they can run their own safety awareness sessions, an ongoing PR campaign to highlight the risks in the online world, and an interactive live event such as this webinar to get online safety messages reaching more people. Going online is now the default way to connect with others, and COVID, as you mentioned just now, is now forcing us to do even more online. So we need to know now, more than ever, how to stay safe and avoid the pitfalls of scams and other online traps such as phishing. And another more important reason I'm here this evening is that a Grenadian national, Mr. Jervis Dabi, you mentioned already, who also joins us here this evening, was recently awarded the title of Get Safe Online Caribbean Cyber Hero. Well done, Jervis. Thank you very much indeed. And now I'd like to hand over to the first speaker, Mr. John Herring. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Get Safe Online, and everyone for hosting this wonderful event. While I pull up my presentation here. My name is John Herring. As I believe was mentioned, I'm a Senior Government Affairs Manager at Microsoft. And hoping everyone can see my slides now. And I wanted to take a moment to sort of, I guess, introduce the threat landscape as we see it at Microsoft. We have a sort of unique vantage point, and we do produce a digital defense report each year. And in fact, the most recent one we produced towards the end of 2020, I'll be walking through some of its findings right now, and is the most comprehensive one that we've done to date. Just to a little bit of background, we are a very large global multinational company. And that allows us to pull on a lot of different security teams to gain insights about what are the leading threats online today. I won't walk through each of these, but suffice to say, we have a very wide-ranging set of experts and opportunities to analyze signals, as it says there, around 8 or more than 8 trillion per day, and also the researchers and scientists and engineers across social media teams, and obviously on the software side and on our cloud services side, have just a lot of unique expertise to pull together, what is still at the end of the day a limited report, but a fairly expansive one when it comes to cybersecurity threats and cyber risks. Again, I won't belabor all of this, but just to say that there are, especially enabled by being a leading cloud service provider, there's an opportunity to scan emails and documents and things to improve security for users and customers everywhere. And that vantage point allows us sort of unparalleled insight into what are the leading threats around the world. And what continues to be the #1 threat on top of that list is sort of one of the more simple forms of attacks that's been around for a very long time. And those are phishing attacks or different versions of phishing attacks. And when we say phishing, it's something that I think most folks who have been using technology for decades now are very familiar with. They're usually email-based attacks that are trying to steal sensitive information or upload malicious software on your computer via messages or communications that are thought to be from legitimate resources or even from people that you would trust. It's important to keep in mind that cybercrime itself really is a business, and a thriving business, a multi-trillion-dollar a year business. And it is quick to evolve with the challenges and issues of the day. And nowhere is that more true than when it comes to phishing-based attacks, and how quickly they adapt to exploit either changes in your own life or changes in broader social circumstances, which we've certainly seen with the COVID-19 themed attacks, which we'll talk about in just a moment. But it's important to remember that these things do evolve quickly and require us all to be extra vigilant and aware every time we are using our online ecosystem, and especially when we're deciding whether or not we are going to trust a particular email or message we receive. Just looking over the past year, what's been especially, I think, harrowing and frustrating from a security perspective is just to see how quickly cyber criminals have adapted their methods to target folks who are experiencing very vulnerable circumstances, which we all have been as we've been learning to live with the COVID-19 pandemic. All of us have been searching for information, for answers. There's been no one around the world who hasn't had some sense of panic as it relates to this over the last year. And criminals are very quick to sort of capitalize on that, leveraging headlines from the day, important news stories, things to make you think that this is a legitimate source of information, giving you precious information that you're craving and that you should be trusting. And so whether it's in the US or in South Korea with the examples here, we see these themes of attack tracking the news of the day and what is most important. And we've actually tracked now at least one COVID-19 themed phishing lure in every single country around the world. So nobody is immune. And these attacks are increasingly getting very sophisticated to the point where it's very difficult to tell something that is legitimate from something that is illegitimate. There's just a couple examples up here on the screen. One just to show a campaign as it's evolved from a pre-COVID-19 era to a post-COVID-19 era. Clearly trying to imitate a CDC address on the right there, as well as capitalizing on a COVID-themed heading for that page to try and fool victims into surrendering information or logging on to somewhere that would steal their credentials. One of my personal favorites is the wrong word perhaps, but something that I always get a bit of a chuckle at is the spoofed Microsoft domain with an RN to make up an M, as you can see in the lower right corner there. And it's these subtle ways in which people are trying to exploit various victims that has proven to be very, very successful and requires a lot of vigilance. We offer obviously a lot of security protections across our various email services, as well as other services that we provide, but nothing is going to be foolproof and requires greater awareness of users. There's been just some really interesting innovations in phishing in recent years as well. Phishing today is not the same as the phishing emails with a million different spelling errors and sort of comical mistakes that we've seen in years past and used to sort of get a bit of a chuckle at. Today, it's getting extremely sophisticated in some cases and used by a wide range of actors. But some things don't change. The top 5 spoofed brands are the largest organizations that have web presences on the left there. And then certain industries that we all rely on are commonly spoofed because we do tend to naturally trust something that comes from an IT service or a healthcare organization or some kind of financial service place because we're used to saying that should be a reliable source. But that really just makes them much more likely to be targeted as in phishing campaigns. An especially sort of pernicious form of phishing has been credential phishing. This has been around for a while. And is quite simply when someone would set up a fake domain and then send a malicious message from that domain that's pretending to be a legitimate space to entice a victim, whether this is the RN Microsoft domain or somewhere else, to try and make you think that you visited a legitimate page and that you should give some information, often with an urgency to it. Please update your information at this website right away, to then harvest those credentials, either to impersonate that individual on other web presences or to use their credentials to gain access to their other accounts online, or to then gain access to a corporate network that individual might be on. And then one thing that we've seen growing especially quickly from our perspective is business email compromise. And this is a unique form of or variant of phishing in which a cyber criminal might pose as a leading figure in your organization, be it a CEO or a CFO, and whether it's they're spoofing an email address or they've actually gained access to those credentials, they would then send an email to subordinates of that figure throughout a company. So at Microsoft, this might be, if I get an email from Satya Nadella saying, you need to approve this contract immediately, boy, I might feel a lot of motivation to do that and not have that second guess in my head to say, is this a legitimate request? And that's what business email compromise plays on, masquerading as these figures of influence that, again, that we trust. I don't want to sort of belabor too much of my time here, just giving a quick overview and summary, but I encourage folks to check out the broader report, and I'll have a link to it in the next slide here. But there are just a few actionable learnings, and I think there is no substitute for responsible practices on the part of end users, as well as responsible practices that need to be adopted by organizations and even by governments. So I think for everyone should walk away with understanding that multi-factor authentication is critical as a line of defense against these forms of attacks. Good email hygiene, again, both by individuals and then by organizations adopting email authentication protocols like DMARC, investing in user training and awareness campaigns, again, both at the organizational level and at the governmental level, are essential to combating these most common attacks. And then privilege access and other controls that organizations can take are important as well. I'll leave it here with just a couple of valuable resources. One is the Microsoft Digital Defense Report, which I've just given a snippet of from a phishing perspective here today, as well as then two reports that Microsoft has contributed to as part of our work with the Cybersecurity Tech Accord, one of which provides a compendium on cyber hygiene practices, including a focus on email security, as well as a report on the cybersecurity awareness in the Commonwealth of Nations. And in fact, I think two of these images are a bit reversed here, so apologies. But just targeting what are different awareness campaigns that are taking place across the entire Commonwealth of Nations that are seeking to address a variety of cybersecurity challenges, but in particular phishing. So I will turn it back over to Andrea now, and thank you so much for your attention and the opportunity to present alongside this panel.
All right. Thank you very much, John. And can I just say that business email compromise is real? I remember last year reading a report that even the World Health Organization was impacted because you had scammers who targeted the email accounts and trying to get persons to donate to an illegitimate fund. So it's something that we have to pay close attention to. Now let's turn over to our cyber hero, and that's Mr. Jervis Dabi from Grenada. He'll be talking about the impact of phishing scams.
So let me just get my sharing up. All right, so we're talking about the impact of phishing, really, and one of the things that John mentioned is the fact that there is hardly any space on this planet right now, any country where there is technology where computers are being used that have not been on the receiving end of some sort of phishing attack or phishing scam. So it's very important for us to understand that this right now is not a Caribbean problem. It's not a North American problem. This is a global problem, and it is one that is growing, not just in frequency, but also in the sophistication, having evolved quite a bit in the last few months. But before I go into that, let me really start by asking this simple question. In your occupation, whatever you do, I don't know what you do, we have people from all over. Is that written on the paper note in your wallet or purse? On the $20 bill in your wallet, does it say how much you make at the end of the month? Most likely not. I can probably follow up with another question. At the end of the month, when the bills are due, do you think the utility company cares where the money is coming from? Do they say, oh, well, I'm going to take money from the banker, I'm not going to take from the teacher? No, not really. That's not how it works. And it's the same thing when it comes to phishing. And this is what I'm getting at. There isn't a specific or a particular type of people that scammers target. Everyone is a potential target. Everyone is fair game. And the next three slides would sort of bring that out, because before because of how the scams were worded and how the attacks were leveraged against people, you sort of figured, it's targeting gullible people, it's targeting people who are not tech aware. But the reality is, right now, even the very tech savvy, the most tech aware, the most cyber aware persons out there can still become victim if they do not always stay on their guard. And so I want you to take a look at this slide right now. And this was from 2019, where cyber criminals were able to steal 1.7 million US dollars from an Ohio church. A church, yes. They don't care about Christianity or whatever the religion is. The reality is, at the end of the day, it's money, and if they can get it, they'll take it. And that was true of a phishing scam. So that's the church. In 2020, February, that's just a few months ago. That's like what, 12 months ago, you had the Puerto Rican government falling victim to a phishing scam, which resulted in them losing about 2.6 million US dollars. So on one side, you see the church, the religious entities. Now you see the governments having to deal with that. But look at this one. This is us, little Grenada. We have a population of just a little over 110,000 people. And the report coming from our financial intelligence unit suggests that in the last few years, Grenadians have lost millions of dollars as a result, not just because of phishing scams, but because of online fraud. And again, you have churches, you have government, you have small islands. It is a problem that we're facing world over. The reality is, phishing is not just one of the more common type of online scam. It is also probably one of the most profitable because of the low amount of effort you need to put into it. And of course, the returns. Now, I know you might be saying, hey, but I don't have millions of dollars. True. But if the fishers are able to get $20 from 1,000 people, that is, that's $20,000 they didn't have to start with. And they may very well be doing that from the comfort of their homes in just a matter of minutes. This is how serious the problem is. And now I'm going to focus on the impacts. Now, there are several different impacts. There are several different aspects of our lives, physical and digital, that, get touched when one either encounter phishing attacks or fall victim to these sort of cyber threats. And I'm just going to look at 5, but there are a few others out there. And the first one, we got to start with the money, financial loss. And you're looking at direct and indirect monetary loss. It's not just about big companies losing millions of dollars, or as you saw, governments, because somebody was not as alert or as suspicious and cautious as they should have been, just sending money in an account that really should not have, even been within their viewpoint. But you're also seeing small people, the regular Joes, the hard-working men and women in our different countries, within our communities, maybe even in our homes. For some of us that, some of you who are on the call right now, are losing money. And of course, this is one of the things that is really driving a lot of the online scams, but more so the phishing scams. You also have the kickback from regulatory bodies after some companies, for whatever reason, messed up, and they end up, being on the receiving end of a phishing attack, or their information got compromised. And I think it's very important for us to understand that, because I know, in a few minutes, Darren is going to speak about what you can do. And, in the back of your mind, I want you to understand, hey, it tends to always be about the money when it comes to a lot of these scams. It may be a long game, but in a lot of instances, that is ultimately what you're looking at. It might be, not just getting cash, but selling some of the things that, they're able to get as a result of some of these attacks, which takes me to the second point, and that is theft. And you're looking here at not just data theft. So somebody, putting together a nicely worded email, and they're able to trick you into thinking that it's coming from your boss, your supervisor, some loved one, somebody you trust, as John pointed out, and you click on the link. And now they have access to so much of your digital life. They have access to your network. They have access to your computer systems and so forth. And based on the organization you work with, based on the sort of data you handle, you might be looking at the theft of trade secrets, research documents, customer lists, formulas, you name it. It might also be just your credit card details, tying it back to number one, financial loss. Number three, we're looking at disruption to digital life. And, maybe 5 years ago, we were not as dependent on the digital side of things. But I think in most cases now, as a result of the pandemic, COVID-19, a lot of what we were comfortable doing offline, in the physical space, a lot of what we had to do in the physical space, a lot of that has sort of transitioned into the digital realm. You have more online learning happening now. You have more children with different devices. You have more workplaces having to embrace more technology, different governments, and so now reverting, or not reverting, but now embracing digital payments, whereas before you had to join a line and so forth. Now imagine what happens when, because somebody was not paying as much attention as probably they should, click on a link, and your entire system is now, taken over by ransomware or some other form of malware. You have a serious problem, a serious disruption to that digital flow. And that is on the bigger side when you look at the companies and the corporations. But even for the average Joe, even for me and you, there is going to be quite a bit of interruption that happens as well. Because now, instead of you just being able to go about your daily duties, you now need to sit down and you have to sanitize your accounts. You may have to change passwords. You have to figure out, all right, which accounts are linked to this email address. Is my Amazon account linked to this? Is my Netflix account? Which credit cards are tied to these accounts? All that. And you sort of have to put on pause a lot of what you should have been doing or what you had planned on doing now just to sort things out because of a phishing attack. And we have to understand it's not just phishing attacks that cause serious disruption to our digital life, but this is this is what we're focusing on this evening, or wherever you are, whatever the time is, like where you are. So you do encounter that level of problem as a result of phishing. Number 4, you have damage to brand. And again, we're looking at brand in 2 different lights here. One, bigger companies, corporations, businesses. I mean, we trust, as John pointed out, when you see something coming from a pharmaceutical company or an IT services company, you sort of believe that whatever comes from them, it should be good, it should be right, we should be able to enter our credentials, we should be just safe because they know what is going on. Now, what happens is when these companies fall victims to these attacks and the information get out there, I'm going to start thinking, well, hey, this company is not as secure as I thought it was. Maybe I should think twice about doing business with them moving forward. or maybe I should, just completely blank them and consider my other options. When this tech company that is providing my software solution fall victim, now I'm wondering, all right, what should I do? Should I still use these other equipment I have from them, even though it may not be directly linked? But you could understand how something like that is going to affect your customer base, because you're looking at loss of trust. All right. And brands are built on trust. For us as regular people, our brand is going to be affected as well. Imagine your email or your Facebook account or whatever it is, your social media presence, for whatever reason, the credentials to access them now are in the hands of phishers. And they can get on there and say whatever, and people would believe it's actually coming from you because, hey, it's your account. And there is nothing that suggests it's not you that is behind the keyboard. And it really is going to affect your image, your brand. It is going to affect, in some instances, your reputation. And you might be looking at years of having to repair something that happened in just a few hours because of one wrong click or one wrong download or one wrong responding to whatever it is that the fisher was using as the vector to really deliver their whether it's malware or whatever it is that they plan on getting you to fall victim to. Number 5, and that's the last one, and this is really a big one, and that's the emotional trauma. We look at the monetary loss, the theft and disruption to digital life, the damage to brands, and we may want to rank these as being higher or being more devastating, but the reality is a lot of what happens as a result of phishing scam can be tied to emotional trauma. And what do I mean by that? We're talking about feelings of anger. Some people tend to be very ashamed, embarrassed. This can lead to depression, loss of trust. Some people may even feel like emotionally violated. I mean, come on, this is my email. This is my private digital space. How dare you? I thought I was the only one who had the password. I thought whatever messages I had within this space was private, confidential, just between me and whoever I was rapping with. And now I find out that some scammer, some bad actor somewhere out there was able to get in and do whatever. It's like, you go to work, you come home, and you find out that somebody was able to get into your bedroom, go through your closet, what have you, go through your underwear, your lingerie. This is going to leave you feeling not in the most happy and peaceful and calmest of places. And you find that happening as well as a result of phishing scam. But it's not just that. And this is the worrisome part. The fact that because of this shame and embarrassment, you have a lot of people not, being willing to come out and say, hey, this is what happened. I was a victim of a scam. They tend to keep the information to themselves in a lot of the times, just so they would not have to face the jeers and the laughter and the insults that sometimes are leveled against them. How could you have fallen victim? You should know better. You should be smarter than that. But the reality is, phishing scams, they are based on social engineering. They tap into that part of us that makes us human. They wanting to empathize and sympathize, wanting to be caring, wanting to be loved and appreciated, wanting to have more. And it's not, and get me here, and I hope this is, this comes across perfectly clear. Not just greedy people fall victim to phishing scams. They're people who are genuinely looking for investments and wanting a better life for themselves. And through this social engineering, this process of these scammers looking for the vulnerability in what makes us us, what makes us human, and exploiting that, they end up on the receiving end of these scams. I mean, it pissed me off. So I have to be honest with you. I get really upset when you consider the heartlessness behind some of these scams. But anyway, I'm sure we'll get to talk a little bit more about that because right now we're going to turn over to Darren, who is going to look at how you can protect yourself. And listen, you have to, if you have a notepad or something, pull it out. You're going to get some good tips. And please, when you get off, you may need to make some changes. Do make them. Andrea, I'm going to stop here right now. Over to you guys. Thank you so much.
All right, we'll go straight to Darren. Go ahead, Darren.
So hi guys, yes, I'm almost certain that we realize this is not the topic we're going to be speaking about today, not this type of fishing in the Caribbean, right? But it is actually this type of fishing in the Caribbean, where someone is literally sitting behind your computer trying to get your secret information, and they've been doing so in such very, very smart ways. I mean, just take this particular one, for example, John, and I'm sure you may have seen numerous of these. At a first glance, you probably would not even realize what's wrong with this particular page. But if you look at the address bar, you're seeing it's actually mbas.org.sg and not a Microsoft domain. And most of the times, we are scared into clicking on a link, in that email and end up on this page and said, oh my gosh, I have to change my username and password now. And we get catch, even some of the experts, in the field, we can get caught sometimes. And in Trinidad and Tobago, we are not very far from that as well. I have some numbers here, some that seem quite staggering, 2016, 2017, and 2018 numbers of figures, that are in the hundreds of thousands and in the millions of folks that have been scammed, through phishing activities, right? What you would have seen there in 2017, that really, really high figure of 7.3 million, doesn't mean that, almost everyone in Trinidad and Tobago fell prey. There were actually two really, really big what referred to as whales that were caught in this particular phishing scam. And you'll probably find out a little bit more about that in the next few slides. So you have to know how to protect yourself from phishing attacks, because on a daily basis they get so much more sophisticated. So I have a little bit of tips here, and as John said, they genuinely present themselves as emails. However, before emails became as prevalent as they are, we used to receive phishing scams via text messages. I'm sure quite a few of us, questioned whether we did really have that long lost family in Nigeria who left us that inheritance. Because we're wondering, that few hundred million sounded like something you might want to get into, right? But emails are one of the initial signs, or techniques that are used when it comes to phishing attacks. When you receive an email and it asks you to click on a link, that link should really and truly, spell out exactly the place that you're going from, right? And if it's a shortened URL, what I would recommend is visit this website, unshortened.it. Check it out and make sure that that's, an appropriate link before you want to get onto it. I actually saw a question in the chat already, why it is that these guys use bad English, so bad grammar could mean a scammer, right? You're really not going to get an impersonal greeting from a huge corporation that's spending millions of dollars in their marketing campaign, right? And I have a really nice example after that will give you the anatomy of a phishing email. Now, this is something that we don't genuinely look at most. I don't think we have that really and truly in our nature to look at the website address, particularly to see if it's HTTP or HTTPS. And that's something that I want the folks viewing it on our chat today to be particularly aware of, right? And as John mentioned as well, these guys, they use so many different tricks and techniques to make us think, just by a quick glance that they are using a correct email address or a correct website address. For example, this particular website, email address, sales@maison.com, if you read it out. But they really want you to think that that's amazon.com, yeah? And of course, there are so many different tools that we can install, but generally the term that you want to look for is an internet security software. Not only an antivirus or not only an anti-malware software, but an internet security software, because it comes packaged, with a whole host of different things, malware protection being one of them. So let's look at the anatomy of a phishing email, right? So at a first glance, this looks like an email from Amazon, but as I said, they're not going to be impersonal, right? So, dear customer, listen, Amazon, I spend quite a lot of money with you. I think you know my first name by now, right? So they're not going to say dear customer. Secondly, they're going to use some sort of scare tactic, right? This paragraph is interesting because it says, in order to prevent any fraudulent activity from occurring, we are required to open it. And it goes on to say, hey, if you don't act now, you are going to be in serious trouble. That's a telltale sign, that they're scaring you into acting almost immediately. And the reason why is they want you to click on the link, right? They don't want you to read throughout everything and get all the details. They want to scare you and say, okay, I think I need to click on this link immediately. But they are also masters of using masked links. So even though I said, make sure they write out the link, but when you hover over that link, when you take your mouse and put it over, you realize that's not the amazon.com/whatever they're saying. That's a completely different link, right? And that piece of software that I spoke to you about before, internet security software, some of them will actually pick up those links and say, hey, we think that's a phishing URL that you're trying to visit there. Some other telltale signs, that's an uncharacteristic use of the logo. I think we all know the Amazon logo. Amazon knows that we all know the Amazon logo, and they're not going to blast it in our face like that as well, right? Some other signs here, we are requiring to open investigation. Say, what now? No, that's not good English. And more than likely, most of these emails are translated into multiple languages. They may come from a hacker or a scammer that may not natively speak English as well, right? So as Jervis said, it happens throughout the world. So this same type of email will go to English-speaking, Spanish-speaking, French-speaking countries. And this is probably one of the reasons why we get such poor grammar in some of these emails. So remember, bad grammar, it's probably a scammer. Now, here's another one that, we probably didn't pay attention to because no one really looks at detail into the email address, right? It's saying it's coming from Amazon accounts, but again, if you look at it, it's not an Amazon.com email address. Now, there may be some techies that are sitting on the call today. I know I saw some names in the chat. And here's another giveaway that definitely is going to pass, most people, but it's the IP address. This is not a real IP address, right? That will not resolve to anything. You can't have 456 in an IP address. But again, we are looking at it and saying, oh my goodness, they saw this IP address and it's coming from Africa. Yeah, it's all to scare us into acting, without paying too much attention. So that's the anatomy of a phishing email. It can look legitimate on the get-go, but there are so many different versions of this. And to the top right hand of this screen, I have a website address, cybersafety.com/fishtank. And in that, I actually have screenshots of so many different types of emails like this that are from, the different providers out there. So feel free to have a look and be aware in case you receive any of those emails. Now, John did mention before that, there are certain types of phishing scams that target particular individuals, right? And these fall into two categories, whaling, and that's targeted to the executives and CEOs. And this is actually one of the reasons why, we saw that really, really huge figure, of statistics in Trinidad and Tobago before, because unfortunately, some CEOs of some multinational companies were the target, and they didn't do due diligence. They were tricked. Some of the emails were really sophisticated, by the way, And what I should let you know as well, it's sometimes not just one email. It can be a series of emails that is conversations, and you build a trust. So these guys really have, Jervis, probably nothing better to do with their time than try to scam the hell out of people, right? But as you said, if they can get through with $20 from 1,000 people, why can't they get through with 20,000 from 1,000 people as well? Yeah. The ones that folks like you and I might be more familiar with would be spear phishing, where we would receive an email that seems to come from our organization or our IT department asking us to change our password because it's going to expire. And often our policies are quite different. And our CIO at UWI always says that IT is never going to ask you to send your password in email. So please, whenever you get that email, do not respond, right? So if you are caught, you should definitely run a scan for malware. And there are quite a few bits of software that you can use. These are just some that, I know that works pretty well. Microsoft Defender generally comes built in with the Windows 10 operating system, and it does a fantastic job. And, if you really want to go that an extra step, or you want to, scan again, there are some other options here as well that you can probably entertain. Now, I personally believe that a weak password is generally one of the ways in which folks can get into our accounts. So I always encourage you to use strong passwords. And I know it's almost difficult, near impossible for us to remember all of these. So a password manager always helps. I think we are moving beyond passwords now and probably going into passphrases. And you can visit cybersafety.com/passwords for a little bit more. But an example of a passphrase is, I love peanut butter. It's something that I remember. And, you just add a few numbers and characters, and there you got an extremely strong password that might be easy to remember. And on that topic of strong passwords, I'm just throwing this out here, just for reference, just in the event some of these passwords might look familiar to you. This was actually the top frequently used passwords in 2020. Yes, folks, people are still using these passwords. And look at the time to crack it, less than a second, I mean, it's really unfortunate that we still think that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is a strong password. That's not going to get us, past the scammers and hackers anymore. Now, there's another technique that you can employ called multifactor authentication, which is where, other than your username and password, you will be prompted to enter some sort of code that will come to your device via text message or some sort of authenticator app. And again, there's so much more we can speak about this, but you can again visit the site cybersafety.com/2FA for two-factor authentication to get a whole lot of information on how to set this up. Most of the email tools, most of the social media tools, they have this facility, and it will really help, to prevent your platform from, becoming a victim of fraud. So lastly, and also kind of touch on what Jervis said coming down to the end, there are some other things that you should consider if you are a victim of a phishing attack. Have a look at your sent and deleted items. If emails might be being forwarded from your account without your knowledge, right? Always make a backup of your files. I mean, I think that's a practice that you should, try to do, because we are, living on our devices now. So we really need to make sure that we can continue and have business continuity on a regular basis, right? If you can, alert your organization that was spoofed. So if you receive an email from your work and that's a phishing email, send a message to the IT saying, hey guys, I think we have, a phishing attack that's going around in our company. Let's warn the other employees, yeah? You may want to do some damage control, because if your email was compromised, people might be receiving email from you, unbeknownst to you, and you might be asking them for some money or some help, and you really don't know, right? So you want to send out an email to your close contact saying, hey guys, I think I might have been a victim of a phishing attack. Ignore any of those, emails before. And watch out, most importantly, for warning signs of identity theft, right? So as we mentioned, emails sent on your behalf, fake social media accounts. I'm sure many of us, particularly those who are on Facebook, might receive a message from our friend saying, hey, that's a fake account for me. Don't respond to that, or ignore that account. I think that is also a byproduct of a phishing attack. And of course, as Jervis said, monitor your credit card statements, because they're really after the money, right? So alert your bank, let them put a little extra effort into looking at your statements if they see things that are not within your regular levels of transactions. So that's it for me. We do have, I'm sure we have a lot of questions from the the attendees here. So I'm going to hand it back over to Andrea, and let's see what we can get answered this afternoon.
Okay, thank you very much, Darren. And I must tell you, about a month ago, I got an email from a coworker, and that thing you said about bad grammar, probably a scammer, is definitely a fact. I saw the email and I was like, this doesn't seem right. I didn't click the link. I was aware of that because the link and the URL, everything looked weird. But I wasn't taking any chances, and I changed out all my passwords linked to that email address. It took me 4 hours one day and another 4 hours the following day. Tedious, but it's something that
well worth it, I'm sure.
Oh yes, I have not seen any attacks yet. I think I maybe need to do some more scans. All right, we had a question from Paul Palmer, and he was asking if the masked link is shown, how can we tell that it's fake? And I'm going to put that question to you, Darren.
Right. So it's really easy for us to figure out if a link is fake. So someone could type out a link, make it look as if it's coming from Amazon.com or Microsoft.com. You just take your mouse and let the mouse hover right over that link. Leave it there for a second or two, and then you'll see a little pop-up comes with what the actual link is. And then you'll be able to compare it to what was typed out in the email. Once you can make that connection, it's the same, then you're good to go.
All right. And John, in your presentation, you mentioned something about having good email hygiene. Normally, hygiene is associated with individuals. Talk to us a little bit more about that. What is good email hygiene?
Yeah, so there's a range of good practices that we think of as being like cyber hygiene. In the same way we talk about, digital viruses, you can think of them as similar to viruses you catch in the physical world. And there's ways to protect yourself against that through various good hygiene tactics. I think Darren did a really nice job walking through ways in which you can use a complicated passcode or passphrase for your password. Please do not reuse your passwords. One of the, I think, richest pieces of pay dirt that criminals can find with phishing scams is if they're able to access your information and your passwords and your credentials, and they successfully have you enter that information and you're using that across multiple platforms. That's a really easy way for them to recycle that information and really have double success with that. There's also then, hygiene practices that not only individuals, but organizations can adopt to improve the overall security of their email environment. And probably the best one among that to highlight would be DMARC. I won't go into all of the specifics, but DMARC stands for Domain-Based Message Authentication Requirements. And I'm forgetting the C for a moment, but it's a protocol that allows an organization to confirm that the domain name that is sending the email is in fact the one that it's saying that it is, and that it has security keys that are matching up, and that it should be a trustworthy resource. This is great both for a recipient of emails, but then also if you're the owner of a domain and you want to make sure that your brand that's associated with that domain is being protected and that nobody's impersonating that presence and falsely sending things from your domain. So for individuals and organizations, there are good cyber hygiene tactics, especially as it relates to phishing.
Okay, thank you, John. And Jervis, for you, if it is that I am locked out of my account, what do I do? How do I handle that?
All right. Well, if you're locked out, most of the service providers, they have a system that will allow you to get in contact. It doesn't happen within a few minutes or so, but they'll put you through a few steps where you will have to prove that, hey, this is actually your account. You're the one trying to get back in, because remember, you're looking at a situation where the person most likely logged in, change your credentials, maybe change your recovery email address, maybe change your telephone number, a host of different things. So most providers, they do have a system, but understand it's one that will take multiple steps before you regain the account. And based on whether you're willing or not to go through those steps, you may have to, just end up creating new accounts and so.
All right. Thank you very much for that, Jervis. Now, we had a poll that we had launched at the beginning. A number of you have responded. talking about if you've seen a spike in phishing attacks during the pandemic, 75% said yes. Have you ever been a victim of a phishing attack? Oh, this is actually good. 78% said no, but sorry for the 24% who have been victims. I hope you have recovered. And our next question was, what are the most common signs of phishing attacks? Give me a minute here. Let me scroll down. And this is the majority. 51% said request for credentials, payment information, or other personal details. Fourth question, did you know that phishing can be done via phone call? And yes, our panelists, not panelists, or participants are very much aware. 73% said yes. And how do you handle phishing attacks? And 51%, the majority, said they ignore all suspicious activities. And that's actually a good thing. I'm going to give my panelists 20 seconds each to say their final remarks as we wrap up. Beginning with you, Darren. We'll go to Darren, then John, then Jervis.
Well, I just want to end up with, the quote of the day, bad grammar is probably a scammer. I think if you have to take away, any of the major pointers, look out for those emails, check the grammar. If it's scaring you into acting, definitely is something you want to take a little time before you respond. If you're in an organization, check your IT department, alert them, let them be aware. And guys, we have to be on our P's and Q's, because these scammers and hackers, they're presenting more and more sophisticated things on a regular basis. So everyone, be safe, and hope we could chat again soon sometime.
Echoing everything Darren and Jervis have said, I think responding to the poll results real quick, I would also highlight for number 5 there, please do also report the issue if you have been victimized by a phishing attack. That does allow, in particular, your email service provider to be able to identify challenges and avoid others from being victimized by those same scammers. I think the one big piece of guidance I would want folks walking away with as individuals is, whenever possible, enable multi-factor authentication, whether that's two-factor or other multi-factor authentication. It's the single best way that you can protect your own credentials and things where you are having unique access. So whether that's using an additional piece of biometric scan, like a fingernail or a facial scan in addition to your password, whether it's using a PIN that goes to your phone number in addition to your password. If there's a way that you can create 2 steps to authenticate your account, you're protecting yourself from quite a bit of the work that scammers would like to do with these attacks.
All right, and I guess it's me bringing the cuttings down. I would say be suspicious, question everything, and most importantly, stay aware. So be suspicious, question everything, and be aware. Be aware of what is going on, because the sophistication of the attacks, it's only going to get way better, and you need to be on your P's and Q's. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much to our panelists, Darren De Ray, John Ehring, and Jervis Dabi. And thank you as well to everyone for joining us for another Get Safe online webinar. So until we meet again, visit their website, keep abreast of what's happening, and stay cyber smart. I am Andrea Chisholm, and do continue to enjoy the rest of your evening.